Welcome to the Melinda Eitzen Show. I'm Melinda. Today we are so fortunate to have with us criminal lawyer Sheridan Lewis.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here, Sheridan. Well, crime is never going to stop, so I think you're always going to have a job.
Well, here's hoping, I guess.
I know. But it is important for people to have a defense.
Absolutely.
Your job is kind of like mine in that people say, divorce lawyer, they don't really know how to react. Like, why would you want to do that, right?
Absolutely. When I first started this, people would joke, give out a card or something. Oh, I don't need your information. It's like, well, nobody ever does until they do. So
people hate us till they need us.
Absolutely.
Then they
Absolutely.
really are grateful. So there's a lot of different types of criminal cases. In my experience, most criminal lawyers don't do all of them. They have a niche. So what do you do?
So really anything that would fall under a state practice. So there's federal prosecutions and state prosecutions. So anything that's the state of Texas or the city of somewhere in Texas versus the person, that's going to be me. So everything from municipal Class C violations all the way up to murder and ugly child abuse and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So I know you do a lot of domestic violence defense because it touches into the family law world quite a bit, and child abuse. And we have, unfortunately, in family law, divorce law, there's a lot of false allegations of child abuse. It's how they're trying to get a leg up in the custody case. And so sometimes you defend those people. True.
Absolutely. And I do a lot of work with family lawyers. I've been very fortunate to know a few and come from one. We get a lot of work. We work with a lot of family law firms and lawyers here because unfortunately during custody battles and during contested divorces, that's when a lot of these allegations arise, true or not, for the first time. So a lot of domestic violence, a lot of child abuse or child sex allegations, pretty terrible stuff.
Yes. And then you do DWI.
Of course. I think everybody has to at some point. If you're doing criminal defense work, there's a lot of them to go around. So
that I've heard before, the saying that DWI is the crime that could happen to anyone, and ordinary people get accused of that. They're not the criminal element.
Absolutely.
So anybody who drinks, right? I don't drink alcohol, so I'm pretty safe from it. But anyone who drinks alcohol and gets in a car, they have a risk.
There's a risk, and I mean, even something else, and I haven't seen it as much recently, but we had a stretch where a lot of people were getting overprescribed medications as well.
Oh.
So it's drugs, alcohol, or any substance or combination of the substances. So obviously illicit drugs are pretty obvious, but a lot of people unfortunately think that because they're taking what's prescribed to them that they're okay to drive or that they would not be considered intoxicated. But if they've lost the normal use of their mental or physical faculties because of that, then, they run that risk.
Oh, that's a great point. Because I've seen on my prescriptions before, don't drive while you're on this, but I don't know if everybody heeds that warning.
Yeah. Or if it mixes or, mixes with alcohol. So some people having, one drink, possibly with something. But we get a lot of, like Xanax or Ambien, things like that. And so, which anybody that's been around people on Ambien, I mean, hopefully you haven't been because you really don't know what you're doing a lot of the time. Hopefully you haven't been hanging out with people on Ambien. But.
Yes. Oh, good point. And then with the whole opioid, am I saying it right? That crisis. So those people could be overdoing sometimes.
Absolutely.
That turns into an addiction.
Well, and just the over-prescribing, I think. I mean, I've had, soccer moms who didn't have a drop of alcohol in their system, but when we started looking at their blood toxicology and then looking at the prescriptions they're on 10 or 12 different medications. I mean, it was hard even to figure out how they did, mix with each other. But it's just when you start talking about a dozen medications, it's going to be really hard to convince somebody that was all okay to drive on.
And maybe the doctors aren't aware, like they have more than one doctor prescribing and they're not doing a good job of educating the doctor on what they're on.
Sure. I think not to get deep into that, but I'm sure and I think there's some doctors who just overprescribe too, but
yeah,
I think absolutely, I think that could be a problem. And not following the directions on the medication. Like you said, most of them will have warnings.
Yes, read the medication. Okay, well, those are good tips. So let's say that somebody makes a poor choice. I don't understand why they don't just take the Uber. I really don't. It's so easy now.
It is. Uber, like I said, we're a big Alto family, but DWIs are by and large more expensive than any ride home that you're going to pay for. So
Yeah.
I agree. It's tough. I mean, I think, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of people with really high BACs come in the last few years since Uber has been so prevalent, or these ride shares have been so prevalent. That it's possible when people are very intoxicated, they're just not making good decisions. So we've had a lot of other people that are really on the lower end and maybe not intoxicated that also get arrested still. So kind of both extremes. We're not getting as many of those just kind of run of the mill, maybe just a couple of drinks and they drive home, because maybe those people are making better decisions, in that frame of mind.
I see. Well, they need to make the decision ahead of time. Like, don't wait till you're drunk to get the Uber. Plan ahead. If you know it's going to be a drinking occasion, take the Uber to begin with, right?
I don't disagree, especially with parking and everything else. There's a million reasons to
Yes.
justify getting a
Just
ride.
take the Uber. Okay. So let's say they did not listen. They did not heed my
Sure.
just take the
Okay.
Uber advice, and they have been arrested, or not even arrested yet. They have been pulled over, right? The police are here. And the police want you to do a lot of things, right? They want you to walk on a line or follow the light or blow into the thing. Should they do all that?
You should not.
Should they do any of it?
Really, no. I mean, your primary obligation is to follow the commands of the officer as far as, turn your car off if they want to talk to you, that kind of thing. But, and identify yourself. You do have to do that.
Give them your driver's
Right,
license.
if
Give
you're
them your
driving.
insurance. Okay.
Yes. And so, other than that, I always tell people be polite, but politely refuse everything. And if it helps to kind of arm yourself with what you would say in that situation, again, I mean, you hate to prepare for this, but there are people who get pulled over or who get in a car accident and it's just late at night and the police want to make sure they haven't, had too much to drink or they aren't intoxicated. I mean, there are people who get in this situation who are not intoxicated. And, unfortunately, if you've had anything to drink or you're on any medication or any combination of those things, you should still be very cautious to do anything that the police ask you to do. That's answering questions about where you've been, what you've been doing, if you've had anything to eat or drink, the timing of all of that. All of those questions even are used to gather information that can be used against you later. And so, even something as innocuous as those kind of questions, when did you eat dinner, those kind of things. But yeah, certainly any kind of tests, even as simple as following the stimulus or anything like that. Of course, those are used to gain evidence against you, and most people do not do well on those, whether they're intoxicated or not. And so certainly it's creating less evidence against yourself if you are going to be arrested. Now, there's probably a likelihood if that officer's made up their mind that they will still arrest you, whether you do those things or not. But you've got to think kind of big picture. When I get out of jail tomorrow morning, how much evidence are they going to have against me?
Yeah, because ultimately I need to beat the charge, right?
You'd hope, absolutely. But, the more, it's kind of one of those, man, if we have 10 minutes of video and you just say, gosh, officer, I'd like to talk to my friend's an attorney. I'd like to call her real quick and just ask if I should answer these questions or do anything. And they, of course, will not let you call an attorney, but it shows that you're thinking, somewhat thinking reactively to the situation, and maybe normally, maybe it's showing some normal use of your mental faculties that you're asking, a decent question.
Yes.
But then you're being polite as well and not looking belligerent or emotional
Right.
or anything like that. And then, and then you've got to kind of think, I don't think they need 2 hours of me doing these tests out here,
Right.
stumbling around on the side of the road. And
So the first thing they're going to probably say is get out of the car. Do I get out of the car?
you have to, if the officer asks you to, you really should, as a general premise, whether it's legal or not, whether they have legal grounds to do it. I always say it's, you can't litigate that stuff on the side of the road. You don't want to be in a position where you're combative with the police
Yeah.
or not following their
So I
commands.
get out of the car,
But beyond that,
then I politely decline.
you just say, gosh,
I could just
officer.
say, I politely decline.
Absolutely. I wouldn't even, of course,
Respectfully.
I wouldn't tell them I'm an attorney necessarily, but I would probably say, gosh, I've heard that I shouldn't do this, or
Yes.
something like that. Just kind of aw shucks it. And,
Yes.
And again, they may arrest me, but I'll be in better shape than I would have been trying to be nervously doing these tests.
Yes. Okay, let's say that somebody is arrested and they were drinking, just between
They were
us.
drinking?
Yeah, let's say they were drinking. How much is it going to cost them in cost of a lawyer, average fees out there, cost of the fees they have to pay, they have to go take some class, all that together? It's going to be more than $1,000, right?
Absolutely.
So a few $1,000s at least.
Several thousand between lawyer and court costs and everything if you dispose of your case pretty simply, just with a probation plea, which I would think most cases probably end that way around here. If you go on to trial, there could be more fees for the attorney, fees for an expert witness. Sometimes we use experts depending on what the case dictates. And then again, of course, depending on what the outcome is, there could be fines. For a CWI with over 0.15, it could be up to a $4,000 fine.
Oh,
That's
my
just
word.
the fine, not the court costs, not the probation fees, not the classes. So
Yeah, and plus the hassle. You have to miss work. You
Absolutely.
have to deal with all of this. So much less expensive to just pay for the Uber.
back to this is an Uber ad. It's not an Uber ad, but it is a good point. It is a good point.
Okay, so that's not the only thing you handle is DWIs. You mentioned family violence and child abuse.
Yes, ma'am.
I had family violence, in divorce. We have a lot of allegations of family violence. Some are real. Obviously, we are concerned about protecting people, but some are not. They're just trying to get positioning in the divorce. I had one guy who got a ticket. I had never seen that before. It was a family violence ticket. He wasn't arrested. He was just handed a ticket. What's that about?
Well, and some people not even handed, some people get mailed a ticket at large, where if somebody's made an accusation against them that the police find credible, they can actually mail it to you. So some people don't even know there's been an incident or allegation or anything. There is a Class C assault, which is for offensive contact or assault by threat. And so if it's that level of assault, and so not bodily injury, which it gets you to the Class A misdemeanor, the real charge, and bodily injury could just be, pain to a certain level. But so if you're just kind of talking about the simple
I'm going to kill you.
Well, that could be something else too. But yes, I mean that could be like a terroristic threat or something. So the threat of killing, but even just I'm coming towards somebody, or a lot of the simple he grabbed my wrist or she pushed me or something like that kind of, well, I'm not really hurt if I'm honest.
I'll show you.
Throwing a drink at somebody, we've had a few of those.
I think this guy was drunk and he said something like, I'll get you, or it wasn't I'm going to kill you, but it was kind of an indirect, not a good thing to say. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the key with those cases really, and the thing I've kind of run into over the years, that people don't necessarily always take those as seriously as they should, because anything accusing you of family violence, that affirmative finding of family violence, whether it's on a ticket or a Class A misdemeanor or up to a felony level, is going to affect things. Obviously, you can speak more to how it affects you in custody situations, but it also can affect your gun ownership rights and kind of many other things that, so even at that ticket level, you could have those implications. And so it's really important, again, not to just become an advertisement, but I mean, it is important to
fight
at least talk to a lawyer about what you need to do and fight it if you can, and make sure it's handled properly. You may be able to negotiate even just to take the family violence finding off the case. It may be a situation where splitting the baby and you just at least get that removed so you don't have those consequences.
Yes, absolutely. Fight it. So we sometimes have protective order cases.
Of course.
There's the criminal protective order, but there's also a family law protective order, as you know. And in those cases, I'm always appalled when somebody comes to me, I'm the second lawyer, right? They're unhappy with the first lawyer, and the first lawyer just agreed to a protective order. I was like, never. My personal rule is never agree to a protective order because it has serious implications, and they do have to put on proof and prove it. Make them prove it. That's what I tell my clients. Make them prove it. Yes. And it's not just protective order or no protective order. There's terms that could be better or worse for you. Like you said, is that language going to be there, that finding of family violence?
Right.
How long is the protective order going to last? So when you make them prove it, you also have an opportunity to tell the court, we don't want that level. We don't want it at all.
Sure.
But we don't want that level of term.
Absolutely.
So I know in the criminal world, many, many, many cases are what you hear pled out.
Right.
Explain what that means.
Well, I mean, the simplest explanation is just at some point in a case, if it's not going to get dismissed, you reach a point where you either try to negotiate an agreed resolution with the prosecutor, or you set the case for trial and go forward in that direction. And so reaching an agreed disposition, whether that's for jail time or prison time or probation, that would be when you go, and then you go in front of the judge and you enter a plea of no contest or guilty to the charge, or to whatever charge you've agreed to dispose the case as. And then the judge sentences you accordingly, or defers sentence and puts you on probation.
So same deal. It's not just you did it or you didn't do it. It's the terms. If
Right.
you are found guilty, your criminal lawyer is trying to help you get the best possible terms.
Sure. Like with civil cases, I mean, I don't know the numbers, but they always say, most civil cases, the vast majority of them settle, right? I mean, it's the same thing with a criminal case. The majority of them, are probably disposed of without going to trial, whether that's working out some kind of deal we do a lot of deals for conditional dismissals for our clients, where we work long and hard, to get resolutions that are positive for them without them having to go to trial. There's, obviously risk there and stress there. And if we can avoid it for the clients, that's usually what they want. So there's ways to get to that disposition, which of course is very positive for the client. And then there's also ways to get to, charge reductions, things that you can maybe get sealed, or even expunged from your record later. So, I mean, you do want to look at the big picture again, not just kind of, I don't think this is that serious, I'm just going to plead guilty and take my time served. I mean, I hate that, I'm sure there are times where that's prudent for the person to do, but especially young people or people with no criminal history, I hate seeing that.
Okay. When I've had cases where there's also a criminal piece, I always refer to a criminal lawyer. So you or someone else needs to be involved. And I've noticed that those cases take forever. The criminal side and the criminal lawyers are always like, that's good for us.
It's usually not bad.
The evidence gets staler, people's memories get worse.
Especially if there's a purported victim, a lot of times they're more emotional or more committed to prosecuting early on. They might move on with their lives, or, decide, if it was a false allegation, decide it's not worth pursuing once everybody's calmed down or kind of separated for a while. I mean, it typically isn't a bad thing. I mean, there is, the defendant has a right to a speedy trial, and so there are certainly times where they are harmed by not getting their day in court soon enough. And so we do have to make those arguments periodically too. But generally speaking, the passage of a little bit of time, especially, like I said, in victim crimes or more serious crimes. I mean, if I've got a client on bond for a more serious crime, it's almost better to have them out, and they can almost always do something proactively at, using that time before the case comes down to start, look, we need to get you into treatment. We need to get you taking some classes. We need to get you doing, everything, get you enrolled in school if you're a kid. We need to get, do something positive with this time. And so we try to do that, very regularly. That's what I'm preaching to clients who want to rush and hire me the day after they're arrested, which is great. Happy to have you. But most cases are not filed for a few months at least, no matter what kind of case it is. And so we try to use that time as best we can to put the client in the best position by the time the case is filed.
Because it looks good to the judge that they're trying to improve their situation.
Sure. And or the prosecutor, like I said, if we get to a point, if we get to a point where we go to the judge, certainly, but we could get to a point where we're going into the prosecutor and saying, look, hey, this was a little theft charge, and they've taken an anti-theft class and done some community service, and they're real sorry. Here's all this stuff. And sometimes that'll just get the case dismissed. I mean, sometimes we can get that kind of positive jump on it. The client never has to come to court. We look like a hero, but really the client's done a lot of the work, and we just kind of pointed them in the right direction. And it's better, as you might understand too, with these clients, it's better to let them use that energy into something productive.
Yes.
instead of texting me for an update every day, maybe they could go take a class.
My experience in the family courts is judges will forgive anything if you take personal responsibility and take positive steps towards improving the situation. So as an example, not necessarily criminal acts that I'm thinking of, and maybe they are, but nobody's arrested them for it. But maybe somebody has a drug alcohol problem, substance abuse problem. If they just go into court, family court, and deny it, that's not going to get us anywhere. They need to take personal responsibility and say, oh, I do have a problem. Oh, I regret that. Okay, I'm going to rehab, or I'm going to take these steps. I'm going to AA. I'm going to stop. So the court can see, oh, well, they would still be a good parent. You know,
Sure.
we don't need to protect the parent because by the time we get to court, they've already kind of dealt with the problem.
Yeah, and it looks a lot better than, the week before court. They're rushing to get something together just to show the judge, kind of lip service. I mean, it's better.
Yes.
Look, if you get arrested for your third DWI, which is going to be a felony, which probably won't get filed for months or a year or whatever. I mean, the best thing you can do is right after this, you say, gosh, I'm going to, whether it's a problem or not for you. I mean, there's obviously some issue there if you got a third DWI, but whether it's a problem for you or not, we need to do something to address the problem at that time when it is the problem, right? You don't
Yes.
wait a year till, oh, now my case is filed. I want to look good for court. What can I scramble and do now? It's way better if we address it, whether that, like you said, AA meetings. I mean, so much of that stuff is online now or over Zoom. I mean, it's very low hanging fruit.
AA is free.
It's free. But there's a million other things if you're not religious or inclined, to those groups. But I mean, there's a lot of resources out there. I mean, especially in a big city like Dallas, we've got a ton of resources. But again, it's just, I mean, if it's a drug charge, at the very least, how quickly can you start getting me clean drug tests? And we'll get a drug test every month until the case is filed.
Yes.
Just to show, hey, this kid's been clean for a year. When we get to court, you don't actually need to put him in rehab because we've addressed the problem.
Right.
And you sure don't need to put him in prison. It seems like he is able to function out here, with no constraints.
Yes.
And, things like that. I mean, I think that's the idea is show them how good they will do if they were given probation or if they are,
Yes. So listen to get a lawyer
Right.
and let's do what your lawyer says.
I mean, a novel idea, right?
What you said, I like because I say the same thing to my clients. Whether you believe you have a problem or not, right?
Sure.
These are the steps we need to take. And we kind of know they do have a problem if they've had 3 DWIs. They have. I mean,
At the
think
very
how
least-
many times they didn't get
Sure,
stopped.
at the very least, they've got awful luck. Let's say that. And that's a problem to address too, right? But no, I mean, listen.
But we don't even have to convince them. Look,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you think you have one.
No judgment.
is-
I'm not a doctor. I'm not
Right.
their doctor. I'm not a shrink. I'm not, it's just, but we need to still do what we need to do to move
Yes.
forward past this and,
Yes.
and get you in the best place we can get you. And big picture, that is addressing the problem. And I'd like to, help you big picture so that we don't end up back in this situation. Or if we can get you probation for something like that, you're going to be successful. I don't want to set you up to fail. I mean, my goal isn't
Right.
just take your money and as quickly as we can get you a disposition, get you done. I mean,
Right.
I'd like you to be successful on it. That way, we don't see you back. That way I don't run into you on the road for your fourth
Right.
DWI.
And this kind of back to where we started, which is, why would anybody want to be a criminal defense lawyer? You're really helping people.
Is that where we started?
Yes. It kind of why, like people say to me, why would you want to be? They don't say it, but you can see it on their face. When I say I'm a divorce lawyer, they don't know what to say because they're like,
Some people say it.
That sounds horrible, is what they're thinking.
Sure.
But the truth is, you are helping people. You're not just helping them have a proper defense, which they, of course, have a right to and need. You're helping to turn their life around in some instances by giving them that advice.
Sometimes.
Hey, we need to look good for the judge. You're actually changing their life.
On the good days.
If they will do what you
Yeah,
say.
well.
They have to participate, obviously.
Sure.
But that's really rewarding. That's
It is
why
very rewarding.
That's one reason people like to be a criminal defense lawyer.
It's interesting too. It's no 2 days are the same, as you probably
Right.
know in family law as well.
Yes,
But no,
not
that's
boring.
it. On the best days, you get to help people. You get to see
Yes.
people make positive changes for themselves, and
Mm-hmm.
again, we kind of joke, but it's probably your truth as well that. It's like the best clients or, the best situations, we never see these people again, right?
Right.
Like
for
really like you, really think you're a great guy, but I never want to see you again.
sure. They say that to me.
Yeah,
They
'cause it's such a
say,
bonding experience.
Melinda, you've been so great, and I
Sure.
hope I never need to call you again.
Sure, you're in the trenches with these people sometimes for years.
Yes.
Getting through a very hard situation for them. And of course, you're a thoughtful, feeling person. You're going to take on stress and concern for these people. And
Yes.
so when you get through it, it is kind of that we've been to battle together, but
Yes.
don't take this the wrong way, but I never want to see you again.
Right. Because I want your life to be criminal free.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Crime free. Okay, so let's talk about that. What how long have you done this?
About 15 years.
A long time. So if you think about, hey, in all these cases and all this time, is there some red flags that maybe people should have seen? That's true in my family law case. I mean, I saw when they tell me their story, I'm like, you never should have married that person. I see 5 red flags in your story. One lady, no joke, she told me when they were dating, and by now they'd been married, 15 years and had 3 kids. They were driving through the Taco Bell line at 2 a.m, and they had a fight, and he pushed her out of the car and drove away. And she still married that man. I'm just like, okay, well, now that he's throwing you across the room, are we shocked? No, we're not. That was a red flag. Is there some decision point or red flag where people need to be like, stop?
Yeah, I'm certainly not laughing at that situation happening. I'm laughing
It's just so
that was a pretty
crazy.
extreme red flag.
It is so crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there certainly are. I mean, there are people who just, unfortunately, there are people who are young. I mean, we get some young, dumb people. I mean, they're just not making good decisions. An 18-year-old male. I mean, there's,
Their frontal lobe is not fully
absolutely. The
developed.
doctors can explain to you why they're not making good choices, of course, but they're around, bad people a lot of times in their peer group. They're surrounded by people who are certainly not encouraging them to make good decisions. But beyond that, sometimes people just make mistakes. Sometimes people just make bad choices. But a lot of times that's fueled by, desperation, whether it's money problems or family problems or illness or something. But we see a lot of mental health issues. And a lot of addiction issues, and those kind of, are interwoven. But a lot of my clients, there are, that's at least the root cause of a lot of, why they've ended up here.
Yes, tend to your mental health.
Absolutely.
I just think we're so much better as a society at tending to our physical health. Like, people think it's normal to go get an annual physical, but they don't think it's normal to go get an annual mental health checkup,
Sure.
Just have a therapist available. I think it's a great tool in our toolbox. Like, if people are listening who are raising kids, if you can get your kids a therapist, not because they need one all the time, not that they're going to go all the time, but just an introduction to someone. Hey, now I know it's okay and healthy and normal to go just deal with some stress so that it doesn't reach the point that now they're doing some criminal act.
Sure. And I recommend it for a lot of my clients. I mean, because of the stress they're under with the case.
Going
but
through the
also,
case.
Depending on the situation that led to the case, I mean,
Right.
they probably had underlying needs that they weren't addressing. And so, and that, again, that kind of helps me too. I mean, it helps them, of course, big picture. I'm a big
Yes.
proponent of therapy, but I also, having a client who is mentally well, for us to go into court and do what we need to do is way better for me too. So
Yes.
selfishly, I want you to be mentally strong and
Yes.
medicated if you need that, or just at least talking to somebody, having that outlet that's healthy.
Yes.
So no, I think it's a big piece of it. And I wish there were more resources for it. Dallas County does a pretty good job for a big county, but some of the smaller counties, or I hate to say more conservative counties, they don't have anything for mental health resources. It's just, are we going to put this person on probation or cut them loose? And it's like, or put them in prison, and that's just not,
gosh.
none of those are great answers. You're not addressing any problems.
Right. I'm glad I live in a big city.
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes. We have the need and
Except
the
for
crime.
the traffic, right?
Yeah.
But the resource piece
Absolutely.
is definitely more available. But people need to seek out that resource. And if you have a friend or a relative that you see the signs, because sometimes we can't see the signs in ourselves, but your friend or relative could probably tell you. Like, if we lined everybody up and said, who in your family is the alcoholic? Everybody knows that, right? My cousin, whoever. Everyone knows. So maybe we all need to help our family and friends. It's touchy. You don't want to go tell someone, I think you're an alcoholic. But people need resources and availability of that. So.
But certainly, back to your, DWI examples, that's a pretty clear, that's a pretty clear place where people could step in a lot of the time and help somebody not get in that situation.
Yes. Sometimes we have interventions in family law. It's really on usually the substance abuse side. And you can hire an interventionist.
Yeah.
They do it for a living. And they kind of tell everybody what to do in the family. And they have a literal intervention where they come and tell the person with the family and friends, we all think you have a problem. And they demonstrate why they think that, And here's our plan. They have a plan. The interventionist has already worked out a plan with the family. here's the plan. You should go here. We're going to drive you right now to the airport to go to this facility. And that can be effective. But that is another, cost money. You have to pay the interventionist. But.
Well, and that's, I mean, I think that is the case. I think that, resources, unfortunately, matter in that too, how proactive you can be with some of these issues. But, hopefully you aren't in the criminal justice system, by the time you address them.
Right. And there's problems, like you said, don't just say, oh, I'll just pay the fee for that. What about traffic tickets? Should we just pay the fee for that?
Generally, no. I mean, even just a simple speeding ticket or stop sign ticket or whatever you get, even registration tickets, stuff like that. If you can get it deferred or do a defensive driving for a moving violation, you always want to keep it off your record. I mean, everything can affect your insurance. Ultimately, you could get your license suspended if you just pay a couple of tickets. And so you don't want to get, I think it's 3 tickets on a regular license. You don't want to just pay them, even if that's, the responsible thing to just pay my ticket and move on. But, I tell people, even if they don't want to get a lawyer, at least ask, hey, is there any way for me to work something out to keep this off my record? And there usually is. Now, some courts or some situations, if you're going 100 miles an hour, down the tollway, you may have to get a lawyer to go get it. But a lot of times those can still be worked out to keep it off your record or keep it from being as detrimental to your driving record as it could be just as charged.
Yeah, so go through a little hassle, get a lawyer, and take care of your business.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell us about your firm.
So I practice with several other lawyers. We all do criminal defense work. We have a couple of lawyers who do more on the appellate side. We have a couple of lawyers who do a lot of federal work, which I don't do. I don't really enjoy it, but most of us do state cases like I do, and we all do criminal stuff. It's what we love. We don't do anything else. The occasional protective order and things that kind of overlap where it's quasi-criminal, we'll do that kind of stuff. But we love what we do. I think we do a good service for a lot of people.
We're going to put your contact information on the screen.
Nice.
So do you cover Dallas and surrounding counties, or what area?
Really anywhere in the state of Texas. And I mean, technically, especially the federal people can practice really all over the country. But, most of our work is in Texas. But all over Texas, we, have traveled kind of far and wide throughout the state, as you know.
Well, and there's probably some small towns where they don't have a lot of choices or many lawyers who handle this type of thing, or maybe they don't want to hire someone local because they're kind of worried about confidentiality. That happens sometimes for us.
Absolutely.
They're like, I don't want everybody to know my business, so
for the
we're going to hire somebody out of town.
Of course. But, and sometimes the client lives up here, but their case is somewhere else, or vice versa. The case is here,
that's where they
live somewhere else. And so we get a lot of that too. And like I said, within reason, I think we've all done certainly most of the northern half of Texas. We've all kind of gone at some point to most of these counties. So certainly anything, I mean, we're certainly willing to talk to you about a case and see if it's something we can handle, depending on kind of our case volume and, what we know of the court. It may not be right. And some places, certain types of cases, that are really sensitive. I mean, depending on the situation, it just may be better to have somebody that knows the judge and the prosecutor, depending on if you have specific needs about getting a bond set or things that it's just better to know the players to walk into that court and do that. That's the kind of stuff we do around here because we know everybody. We can just call them or walk in and know them and get it done. And so there are certainly times where I'll tell clients, hey, I think it's better if you get a local lawyer for that for this reason.
Yeah.
I will turn down business sometimes because I think it is really in their best interest to look elsewhere or go somewhere where they're more specialized in that.
Yes. Well, that's good. You're doing what's best for the
client. I think there's some karma in that, right?
I agree.
We all need that.
I agree. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for watching. And please tune in again soon to the Melinda Eitzen Show.